30F, and I've been married to Eric, 32M, for 3 years now. We met at a friend's barbecue when I was going through a tough time in my life. I had just lost my job as a graphic designer due to company downsizing, and I was feeling pretty low. Eric was there as a friend of the host, and he immediately caught my attention with his warm smile and easygoing nature. We started talking, and I found out that Eric was a software engineer who had recently moved to the area for work. He was kind, funny, and seemed genuinely interested in my life and career. We exchanged numbers at the end of the barbecue, and he called me the very next day to ask me out for coffee. Our relationship progressed quickly after that. Eric was supportive during my job search, even helping me revamp my portfolio. With his encouragement, I landed a new job at a small marketing firm within a couple of months. As we grew closer, Eric opened up about his past. He told me about losing his parents in a car accident when he was in college, and how it had affected him and his older sister, Sarah, 35F. Eric and Sarah had always been close, but the loss of their parents brought them even closer. They were all each other had left, and they leaned on each other heavily during the grieving process. Eric spoke about Sarah with such love and admiration that I was excited to meet her, hoping we could become friends. However, my first meeting with Sarah didn't go as I had hoped. We met for dinner at Eric's apartment, and from the moment Sarah walked in, I could feel her cold demeanor. She barely acknowledged me, focusing all her attention on Eric. Throughout the evening, she made subtle comments that made me feel uncomfortable. For example, when Eric mentioned that I had recently started a new job, Sarah said, "Oh, that's nice. At least you're not unemployed anymore." Her tone implied that she thought my job was somehow inferior. I tried to brush off her behavior, thinking maybe she was just having a bad day. But as time went on and we had more interactions, it became clear that Sarah's attitude towards me wasn't going to change. She'd often forget to invite me to family gatherings, or make backhanded compliments about my appearance or career. Once, at a family barbecue, she loudly reminisced about Eric's ex-girlfriend, talking about how smart and accomplished she was, all while looking pointedly at me. Eric noticed Sarah's behavior and often spoke to her about it, but she'd always have an excuse or claim he was misinterpreting things. She'd say things like, "Oh, I didn't mean it that way," or "You're being too sensitive, Eric. I'm just looking out for you." Despite Sarah's attitude, my relationship with Eric continued to grow stronger. After 2 years of dating, during which we moved in together and adopted a rescue dog named Max, Eric proposed. It was a beautiful, intimate moment in our favorite park, with Max running around us excitedly. I was overjoyed and said yes without hesitation. When we announced our engagement to Sarah, her reaction was less than enthusiastic. She forced a smile and said, "Well, I guess congratulations are in order." Then she immediately started talking about how we needed to have a long engagement to really be sure about our decision. The real trouble started when we began planning our wedding. Sarah insisted on being heavily involved, claiming she knew Eric's taste better than anyone. She tried to change every decision we made, from the venue to the color scheme. When we chose a beautiful garden venue, Sarah argued that an indoor venue would be more practical. When we decided on a blue and silver color scheme, Sarah insisted that Eric had always loved green and gold. Every time we stood our ground on a decision, Sarah would guilt-trip Eric by bringing up their parents. She'd say things like, "Mom always wanted your wedding to be in a church," or "Dad would have loved to see you in his old cufflinks, not those new ones Alice picked." The week before the wedding, Sarah called Eric in tears, saying she had found some old home videos of their parents that she wanted to include in a surprise slideshow at the reception. Eric was touched by the idea and agreed without consulting me. I was a bit uneasy about the surprise element but didn't want to upset Eric by objecting. On our wedding day, everything seemed perfect until the reception. The ceremony was beautiful, and I felt like the luckiest woman in the world as Eric and I exchanged vows. But when it was time for the slideshow, I realized something was wrong. Instead of a tribute to Eric's parents, the video was a compilation of Eric's childhood and teenage years, with a focus on his relationship with Sarah and his ex-girlfriends. There were barely any recent photos, and I was only in 2 or 3 shots, always at the edge of the frame. I tried to keep my composure, but I could feel tears welling up in my eyes. I looked at Eric, who seemed uncomfortable but didn't say anything at the moment. After the slideshow, Sarah made a speech about how she'd always be the most important woman in Eric's life, barely acknowledging me or our marriage. The rest of the reception was awkward. Many guests commented on the strange slideshow and speech. I tried to enjoy our first dance and cake cutting, but I couldn't shake off the feeling of hurt and embarrassment. After the wedding, Eric was furious with Sarah. He called her and told her that her behavior was unacceptable and that she owed both of us an apology. Sarah played innocent, claiming she thought the slideshow was a beautiful tribute and that I was being overly sensitive. This led to a big fight between them, with Sarah accusing me of turning Eric against her. She said that I was trying to erase their family history and that Eric was betraying their parents' memory by choosing me over her. Eric stood his ground and told Sarah that if she couldn't respect our marriage, she wouldn't be a part of our lives. He suggested she seek therapy to deal with her issues. Sarah hung up on him and hasn't spoken to us since. It's been 2 months since our wedding, and the situation with Sarah is still unresolved. Eric is torn between his love for me and his bond with his sister. He's tried reaching out to Sarah a few times, but she either ignores him or sends nasty text messages about me. I feel guilty for coming between Eric and his only remaining family, but I'm also angry and hurt by Sarah's actions. I don't know if I can ever have a relationship with her after what she did at our wedding. The whole situation has put a strain on our newlywed life. Instead of enjoying this time together, we're constantly stressed about family drama. Eric and I have discussed the possibility of couples counseling to help us navigate this situation. We both want to move forward and enjoy our new life together, but Sarah's shadow looms over our relationship. Eric is struggling with feelings of guilt and loyalty, while I'm battling insecurity and resentment. We've tried to focus on positive things, like settling into our new home and planning for the future. We've talked about starting a family of our own in a year or two, but even that conversation is tainted by thoughts of how Sarah might react or interfere. I've suggested that maybe we should consider moving to a different city to get some distance from the situation, but Eric is hesitant to leave the area where he grew up and where he feels close to his parents' memories. I understand his reluctance, but part of me wishes we could just start fresh somewhere new. My own family has been supportive throughout all of this. My parents and siblings love Eric and have tried to make him feel like part of our family. They've been a great source of comfort, but I know it's not the same as having his own family support our marriage. I don't know what to do. Should I try to mend things with Sarah for Eric's sake? Should we maintain no contact? Am I overreacting to the whole situation? The thought of having to deal with Sarah's hostility for the rest of our lives is daunting, but I also don't want Eric to lose his only sibling because of me. I love Eric more than anything, and I want us to have a happy life together. But I never imagined our first months of marriage would be filled with so much tension and family drama. Any advice on how to handle this situation would be greatly appreciated. Update 1. Thank you all for your supportive comments and advice on my original post. A lot has happened in the past few weeks, and I wanted to give you an update on the situation with my sister-in-law, Sarah. About a week after my post, Eric and I decided to take the advice of many commenters and seek couples counseling. We found a therapist who specializes in family conflicts, and we've had 3 sessions so far. It's been helpful to have a neutral third party to discuss our feelings with and to get strategies for dealing with Sarah. During our second session, Eric revealed something that shocked me. He told me that Sarah had reached out to him privately, claiming that she had some concerns about me that she wanted to discuss without me present. Eric, wanting to keep the peace, agreed to meet her for coffee. At their meeting, Sarah dropped a bombshell. She told Eric that she had hired a private investigator to look into my past, and that the PI had uncovered some disturbing information about me. According to Sarah, the investigator found out that I had been married before, something I had never mentioned to Eric or his family. When Eric told me this in our counseling session, I was stunned. It was true that I had been married before, but it wasn't some dark secret I was hiding. My first marriage was very brief. I got married young, at 22, to my college boyfriend, Mark. We had been together since freshman year and thought we were ready for marriage right after graduation. But we quickly realized we had made a mistake. We had different goals and values, and we struggled to adjust to adult life together. After only 6 months, we decided to divorce amicably. I hadn't mentioned this to Eric because it felt like ancient history. I was embarrassed about my youthful naivety and didn't think it was relevant to our relationship. In the early days of dating Eric, I had considered telling him, but the right moment never seemed to come up. As time went on, it felt awkward to bring up something that happened so long ago. I explained all of this to Eric and our therapist. I also shared more details about that time in my life. After the divorce, I had gone through a period of self-reflection. I traveled for a bit, worked on my career, and focused on personal growth. It was during this time that I realized what I truly wanted in a partner and in life, which ultimately led me to be ready for a serious relationship when I met Eric. Eric was hurt that I hadn't told him about my previous marriage, but he understood why I hadn't brought it up. What bothered him more was Sarah's extreme actions in hiring a PI to investigate me. He felt it was a huge invasion of privacy and a sign of Sarah's unhealthy obsession with our relationship. The therapist helped us work through our feelings about this revelation. Eric acknowledged that while he wished I had told him about my first marriage, It didn't change how he felt about me. We both agreed that Sarah's actions were a severe breach of privacy and trust. With the therapist's guidance, we decided that Eric would confront Sarah about her actions. He called her and put her on speakerphone so I could hear the conversation, with our therapist present for support. Eric told Sarah that he knew about the private investigator and that he was deeply disappointed in her behavior. Sarah tried to defend herself, saying she was just looking out for Eric's best interests. She accused me of being a liar and suggested that I might be hiding other secrets. Eric shut her down firmly. He told her that my past was my business to share when I felt comfortable, and that her actions were unacceptable. He made it clear that if she couldn't respect our privacy and our marriage, she would not be welcome in our lives. Sarah didn't take this well. She began crying and accusing me of brainwashing Eric. She said that I was tearing their family apart and that their parents would be ashamed of Eric for choosing me over her. Eric remained calm but firm, telling Sarah that she needed to take responsibility for her own actions instead of blaming everything on me. The call ended with Sarah hanging up on us. Eric was visibly shaken afterward, but he told me he felt relieved to have finally stood up to his sister. Our therapist praised Eric for setting clear boundaries and suggested we take some time to process everything before deciding on our next steps. In the days since that call, Sarah has been constantly messaging Eric. Some messages are angry, accusing him of abandoning her. Others are pleading, begging him to reconsider. She's even reached out to some of Eric's friends, trying to get them to talk sense into him. She's told them that I'm manipulating Eric and trying to cut him off from his family and friends. Eric has been amazing through all of this. He's ignored Sarah's messages and asked his friends not to get involved. He's also been incredibly supportive of me, reassuring me that none of this is my fault and that he doesn't regret marrying me. We're still trying to figure out our long-term plan for dealing with Sarah. For now, we've decided to maintain no contact. We've blocked her on our phones and social media, and we're considering changing our phone numbers if she doesn't stop trying to contact us. This situation has brought up a lot of emotions for both of us. Eric is grieving the loss of the relationship he thought he had with his sister. He's also dealing with anger and betrayal over her actions. For me, I'm relieved that everything is out in the open now, but I'm also feeling guilty about not sharing my past marriage with Eric earlier. I'm working on forgiving myself and remembering that I didn't have malicious intent in not sharing that information. Our therapist has been helping us work through these feelings. She's encouraged us to focus on strengthening our relationship and supporting each other. We've been making an effort to have regular date nights and to talk openly about our feelings. We're also focusing on building our own family traditions. We've started having Sunday dinners with my family, and we're planning a small Thanksgiving gathering with some close friends. It's helping us remember that family isn't just about blood relations, but about the people who love and support us. Thank you all again for your support. This situation is far from resolved, but we're taking it one day at a time. I'll update again if there are any significant developments. Update 2: I want to thank everyone for their continued support and advice. The situation with Sarah has taken some unexpected turns, and I felt it was time for another update. About a month ago, Eric and I were surprised to receive a letter from Sarah. It wasn't the angry or pleading message we expected. Instead, it was a formal apology. Sarah wrote that she had started seeing a therapist and realized that her behavior towards me had been inappropriate and harmful. She acknowledged that her actions stemmed from her unresolved grief over losing her parents and her fear of losing Eric, the only family she had left. In the letter, Sarah explained that her therapist had helped her understand how her grief had morphed into an unhealthy attachment to Eric and a fear of change. She recognized that her behavior had been controlling and manipulative, and she expressed genuine remorse for the pain she had caused us. Eric and I discussed the letter in our therapy session. Our therapist suggested that while the apology was a positive step, we should be cautious about immediately letting Sarah back into our lives. We decided to respond with a brief email, thanking Sarah for her apology and expressing hope for her continued progress in therapy, but maintaining our boundaries for the time being. We thought that would be the end of it for a while, but we were wrong. 2 weeks after we sent our response, we received a call from the local hospital. Sarah had been admitted after a car accident. She wasn't critically injured, but she did need surgery for a broken leg. Eric was listed as her emergency contact, and the hospital needed someone to make decisions about her care. We were torn about what to do. On one hand, we had been maintaining no contact. On the other, this was a genuine emergency, and despite everything, Sarah was still Eric's sister. After a long discussion, we decided that Eric would go to the hospital to handle the necessary paperwork and ensure Sarah was getting proper care, but that I would stay home. We felt this was a good compromise. Eric could fulfill his family obligations without putting me in an uncomfortable position. However, when Eric arrived at the hospital, he discovered something that changed everything. Sarah wasn't alone. She was accompanied by a man named David, who introduced himself as Sarah's fiancé. Eric was shocked. Sarah had never mentioned being in a relationship, let alone being engaged. David explained that he and Sarah had been dating for almost a year, but Sarah had kept their relationship a secret from Eric. Apparently, Sarah had been so focused on her imagined competition with me that she neglected to share this significant part of her life with her brother. Eric spent some time talking with David while Sarah was in surgery. He learned that David was a widower who had lost his wife to cancer 3 years ago. He and Sarah had met at a grief support group, and their shared experiences had brought them closer. David seemed like a kind and grounded person, and he had been encouraging Sarah to reconnect with Eric and make amends. When Sarah woke up from surgery, she was surprised and embarrassed to see Eric there with David. Eric kept things civil, focusing on her health and the necessary medical decisions. Before he left, he told Sarah that he was glad she had found someone and that he hoped she would be honest with David about everything that had happened. This revelation has thrown us for a loop. On one hand, we're glad that Sarah has someone in her life and hope that this relationship has been a positive influence on her. David seems to be a stabilizing presence, and his own experience with loss might help Sarah process her grief in a healthier way. On the other hand, we're hurt and confused about why she kept this a secret, especially given how much she claimed to value family and openness. It feels hypocritical that she accused me of keeping secrets when she was hiding such a significant part of her life. Eric is particularly struggling with this news. He feels betrayed that Sarah hid such a big part of her life from him, especially after accusing me of keeping secrets. He's also worried about David and whether Sarah has been honest with him about her past behavior. We've discussed this development in our therapy sessions, and our therapist has encouraged us to view this as an opportunity. Sarah's engagement could mean that she's moving forward with her life and may be less fixated on interfering with our relationship. However, the therapist also cautioned us about getting too optimistic too quickly. The therapist suggested that if we decide to reconnect with Sarah, we should do so slowly and with clear boundaries. She recommended that we start with short, public meetings and gradually increase contact if things go well. For now, we're maintaining our distance, but we're open to the possibility of carefully rebuilding our relationship with Sarah in the future, if she continues to show genuine change and respect for our boundaries. We've decided to send Sarah a card wishing her a speedy recovery and congratulating her on her engagement, but we're not rushing into anything more than that. This situation has reminded us that people are complex and capable of change, but also that trust, once broken, takes time to rebuild. We're cautiously optimistic but proceeding with care. In the meantime, Eric and I are focusing on our own lives. We've started looking into buying a house, thinking about starting a family, and planning for our future together. These positive steps are helping us move past the drama and focus on building the life we want. We're also working on strengthening our own relationship. The stress of the situation with Sarah had taken its toll, but we're committed to supporting each other and communicating openly. We've started a new tradition of weekly check-in talks where we discuss our feelings and any concerns we might have. I'll update again if there are any more significant developments. Thank you all for your continued support and advice. It means more than you know to have a community to turn to during these challenging times. Update 3. It's been a while since my last update, and I wanted to share how things have progressed with our family situation. After Sarah's accident and the revelation of her engagement, things were quiet for a while. We sent the card as planned, and Sarah responded with a thank you note that was polite but distant. We took this as a good sign. She was acknowledging our gesture without pushing for more than we were ready to give. About 2 months ago, we received an invitation to Sarah and David's wedding. The invitation came with a handwritten note from Sarah, asking if we could meet to talk before the wedding. After discussing it in therapy and between ourselves, Eric and I agreed to a meeting. We met Sarah and David for lunch at a neutral location. It was awkward at first, but as the meal progressed, the tension eased. Sarah seemed different, more relaxed and self-aware. She apologized again for her past behavior, this time in person and with more specificity about the harm she had caused. What surprised us most was David's presence. He was fully aware of the situation between us, including Sarah's actions at our wedding and her hiring of a private investigator. Sarah had told him everything during her recovery from the accident, realizing that if she wanted a healthy relationship with him, she needed to be honest about her past. David shared that he had encouraged Sarah to continue with therapy and to make amends with us. He also assured us that he understood our caution and respected our boundaries. It was clear that David had been a positive influence on Sarah, helping her work through her issues in a healthier way. During the lunch, Sarah explained more about her journey. She talked about how therapy had helped her recognize her unhealthy attachment to Eric and her fear of abandonment. She acknowledged that she had projected her own insecurities onto me and our relationship. Sarah also shared that meeting David had been a turning point for her, showing her that she could have a fulfilling relationship of her own instead of trying to control Eric's life. The lunch ended on a cautiously positive note. We didn't make any grand promises of reconciliation, but we did agree to keep lines of communication open. We decided to start with occasional text messages and maybe a monthly phone call, with the possibility of more frequent contact if things continue to go well. Since then, we've had a few more meetings with Sarah and David. Each time, Sarah has shown continued growth and respect for our boundaries. She's stopped trying to compete with me for Eric's attention and seems genuinely happy in her relationship with David. After much discussion and soul-searching, Eric and I decided to attend Sarah and David's wedding last weekend. It was a small, intimate affair, very different from the grand event Sarah had pushed for our wedding. During the reception, Sarah made a speech that touched us deeply. She spoke about the importance of family, not just the one you're born into but the one you choose. She thanked David for helping her become a better person, and she publicly apologized to Eric and me for her past behavior, expressing hope for a renewed relationship. The wedding gave us a chance to see how much Sarah has changed. She was relaxed and happy, focusing on her relationship with David rather than trying to control Eric. She made an effort to include me in conversations and even introduced me to some of her friends as her sister-in-law, which felt like a significant step forward. We're not naive enough to think that everything is perfect now. Years of hurt and mistrust can't be erased overnight. But we're cautiously optimistic about the future. We've agreed to slowly rebuild our relationship with Sarah, maintaining open communication and firm boundaries. This experience has taught us a lot about family, forgiveness, and the capacity for change. It's also strengthened our own relationship. Eric and I have become better at communicating and supporting each other through difficult times. We're taking things one day at a time, but for the first time in a long while, we feel hopeful about having a positive relationship with Sarah. It's not the dramatic conclusion some might have hoped for, but real life rarely has neat, tidy endings. We're okay with that, and we're looking forward to writing the next chapter of our family story together. As for Eric and me, we're doing well. We've bought a house and are settling into our new home. We're talking about starting a family in the near future, and for the first time, the thought of including Sarah in that part of our lives doesn't fill me with dread.